Okay, let's unpack this. We've taken a deep dive into a whole stack of sources, detailed travel guides, some research articles, personal insights too, all focused on, well, one of the most visually stunning places on Earth, Norway, but also famously expensive.
Yeah, you've definitely seen the pictures, right? The fjords that just, wow, plunge into the sea, those huge mountain landscapes, and of course the northern lights dancing in the sky. But yeah, just as often you hear about the price tag, it's kind of legendary.
Absolutely. So our mission today is really to pull out the most important bits of knowledge from all this material. We want to cut through the noise, help you understand not just the incredible beauty and the unique experiences Norway offers, but also the practical side, especially the budget realities.
Think of it like a shortcut, maybe, getting you properly informed about actually navigating Norway, finding those aha moments, and feeling prepared, not overwhelmed by it all.
Exactly, because the sources give a fantastic overview. We'll explore what makes Norway so special, the absolute must-see places and activities that keep coming up, break down what things really cost according to these sources, and, crucially, share some clever ways to save money that they suggest.
Right. And we'll also cover getting around because it's a really long country. That's a big factor. And, when the best time to actually go might be, depending on what you're hoping to experience.
So let's start right at the beginning. What is it about Norway that just keep drawing people in? The sources really hammer home its core appeal. Just unparalleled natural beauty. They often put it up there with places like New Zealand or Iceland.
And what's fascinating is the sheer drama of it all. Those fjords, the deep, narrow inlets carved out way back when with towering cliffs all around. They're the defining feature, really.
For sure. The sources mention specific famous ones like Geirangerfjord and Aurora.
Yeah.
Those are near Bergen, I think.
Yeah, and Fjord near Flom, Fjord near Stavanger, and then further north, Trollfjord near Tromsø. And the material points out there are so many ways to see them. You can do a comfy cruise, or get right down on the water in a kayak.
Or hike above them for those epic views.
Exactly, or just drive the scenic roads that wind along the edges. Loads of options.
And it's definitely not just the fjords, is it? The sources talk about huge mountain ranges, that incredibly long coastline from the Arctic all the way down south, and just vast areas of wilderness.
Totally. It's a country where nature feels like part of the national identity almost. And the people. The sources consistently describe them as wonderful, friendly.
And the English proficiency is really high, right? That makes things easier.
Oh, massively easier. Getting around, asking questions, it's generally not a problem according to everything we read.
That connection to nature seems key. They talk about how much Norwegians value the outdoors, which translates into lots of free stuff for visitors to do. And then there's that concept, allemannsretten. Did I say that right?
Yeah, allemannsretten, the right to roam or every man's right. It's a perfect example of that nature connection. It basically allows public access to uncultivated land.
Which includes wild camping.
Yes, exactly. And the sources really emphasize this. It can be a total game changer for travelers, especially if you're on a tight budget and really want to immerse yourself in the landscape without paying for campsites every night.
Okay, so that paints a picture of why Norway is so appealing. Now, what about the how? When you're actually there, what are the absolute must-see, must-do experiences, according to these guides and articles?
Well, nature spectacles are definitely front and center. The sources keep highlighting iconic hikes. Preikestolen Pulpit Rock comes up again and again. That flat-topped cliff hanging dramatically over Fjord.
That's the relatively easy one, right?
Relatively, yeah. About a 4-kilometer hike each way, described as fairly accessible, but it's super popular, like 200,000 visitors a year popular. So the tip is definitely go early if you want those clear photos without the crowds. Oh, and be aware, the material mentions parking costs around 250 Norwegian kroner, and okay.
But there are much tougher hikes mentioned too, for the more adventurous crowd.
Oh, absolutely. If you want a real challenge, Trolltunga the Troll's Tongue is legendary. It's a serious undertaking, a long, strenuous 12-hour round-trip hike to that thin sliver of rock sticking out. But the views are supposed to be just unbelievable.
Wow. And Geirangerfjord, that's the boulder wedged between cliffs.
That's the one.
Oh.
Also famous, often tackled by climbers or very confident hikers. The sources are really clear on this point, though. You absolutely need to assess your fitness level honestly and be fully prepared with proper gear, food, water for these bigger hikes. The mountains aren't forgiving.
Makes sense. Beyond those specific famous spots, the national parks sound incredible.
They really do. Norway has, 47 national parks and over 3,000 protected areas, generally free entry, though you might pay for booking sometimes. They cover everything: waterfalls, glaciers, areas where you might spot reindeer, maybe even lynx or wolves if you're deep in the wilderness.
And lots of activities within them.
Yeah, the sources mention things like caving, canyoning, rafting, even ziplining in some park areas. They call out specific parks like Josefsdalsbreen for having the largest glacier on mainland Europe, Bluffgillis for wild reindeer, and Jotunheimen for serious hiking and climbing. It has over 200 peaks.
Okay, and then if you head way, way north, you get into the Arctic.
Right. Places like North Cape, the northernmost point of mainland Europe up in Finnmark County, and the sources talk about the really unique light up there. The midnight sun in summer, maybe May to July, where it just doesn't get dark.
Crazy long days for exploring then.
Totally. Versus the polar night in winter, November to January maybe, where the sun doesn't rise above the horizon at all. A completely different kind of magical atmosphere.
And speaking of magic in the north,
Yeah.
the Northern Lights.
The Aurora Borealis, yeah. The sources confirm best seen north of the Arctic Circle. Places like Tromsø, the Lofoten Islands, North Cape are prime spots.
Yeah.
Usually between late September and March when the nights are properly dark.
Guided tours are recommended.
Often, yeah. Not just for finding the best viewing spots away from light pollution, but also for handling transport in potentially tricky winter conditions and getting some local knowledge.
Okay, so if you are planning a winter trip, besides the lights, skiing is obviously huge.
Oh, for sure. Norway is a top-tier ski destination. The sources list resorts like Roland, Geilo, Skycampen, Hemsedal, many pretty accessible from Oslo. You've got downhill, snowboarding, telemark, and this incredible network of cross-country trails, like over 2,600 kilometers of them.
But lift tickets aren't cheap, I guess.
No, that's a cost to factor in. Around 300, 450 NOK for an adult day pass, maybe more on weekends. And beyond skiing, the sources mention unique stuff like blue ice hiking on glaciers, like the Foldfana glaciers near Bergen.
The Lofoten Islands also get a lot of mentions, don't they? They sound almost mythical.
They really do. Consistently described as incredibly picturesque, unique. It's this northern archipelago, offers a slower pace, dramatic mountains rising straight out of the sea, unique wildlife, apparently amazing fishing and kayaking.
And a photographer's dream, I bet.
Totally. Especially for capturing those mountains reflected in the water or, the northern lights overhead with those dramatic landscapes.
All right, let's shift from pure nature to the urban side. What are the cities and culture the sources highlight? Oslo.
Oslo, the capital, yeah. Around 700,000 people. It's got a mix. The National Gallery, the historic Akerhus Fortress, the Royal Palace. Apparently, you can see the changing of the guards there daily at 1:30 p.m. It takes about 40 minutes.
The Viking ship museum's a big one, too, though it's closed for a rebuild.
Right. Closed until maybe 2026 or 2027 for a new building, but definitely worth noting for the future. But a major free attraction they highlight is the Vigeland Sculpture Park. It's huge, 80 acres, all outdoors, filled with over 200 sculptures by Gustav Vigeland.
And Acre Bridge Wharf or something more modern.
Yeah, that's a popular waterfront area. And the cool thing about Oslo, that the sources point out, is you're still really close to wilderness. You can easily get out for hiking, biking, swimming, even camping just outside the city.
Bergen sounds equally appealing, the gateway to the fjords.
It really does. Besides being the jumping-off point for fjords and having hiking trails nearby, it's got that famous fish market that dates back centuries to 1200 CE, apparently. You can wander Gamle Bergen, the Old Town area.
And the funicular up Mount Flien.
Definitely a must-do, according to the sources. For those panoramic city views. Rosenkrantz Tower is another historical site mentioned there.
Then there's Trondheim, further north, described as colorful, a student city.
Yeah, kind of in the middle of the country. Different vibe. The sources mention the Bakklandet neighborhood with its colorful houses, the Old Town Bridge, and the really impressive Nidaros Cathedral, a medieval pilgrimage site.
And a rock music museum.
Rockheim, yeah. Dedicated to Nordic rock music. And in winter, they have these ice domes you can visit or even stay in. Also, the Ringvi Music Museum and Botanical Garden. Loads of instruments, big gardens, cost around 140 NOK.
Stavanger's Old Town, Gamle Stavanger, also sounds charming.
Yeah, oldest part of the city, narrow cobblestone streets, those classic 18th century white wooden houses, often with little artist shops. And Stavanger hosts a May Jazz Festival in May.
For getting a deeper dive into history and culture beyond just walking around.
Museums, definitely. The Norwegian Folk Museum in Oslo sounds particularly cool. It's an open-air museum. They've moved over 150 historic buildings there from all over Norway.
including a stave church.
Yeah, the Gullstave Church from 1200 CE, plus old farmhouses, even city tenement buildings. The sources say it does a good job mixing entertainment and education. Entries around 180 NOK in summer, a bit less in winter.
It sounds like there's a good mix of paid attractions and activities, but what about free stuff, especially in the cities? The sources mention options, right?
They do, yeah. Free walking tours are a good shout in Oslo and Bergen. You just tip the guide based on what you thought. In Oslo, Ikkebergparken is a park with sculptures and views, totally free. The Intercultural Museum in Oslo is also free.
And Bergen has free concerts sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes festivals or free concerts, often around the churches. So even in the cities, there are ways to soak up the atmosphere and see things without constantly shelling out for entry fees.
Okay, so that gives us a sense of the amazing range of things to see and do. But now we hit the practical reality, right? The cost. The sources are really blunt about this. Norway is one of the most extensive countries in the world, period.
Yeah, there's just no sugarcoating it based on everything we read. And they really stress that saving money is going to be tough, like really tough, unless you actively commit to things like cooking your own meals and camping. Ultra-budget travel is described as difficult. Not impossible, but it takes serious effort.
So let's put some numbers on it. What do things typically cost based on the estimates in these sources? Accommodation first.
Okay, so hostel dorms, you're looking at maybe around 300 NOK a night. Budget hotels, big jump, more like 700 to 1200 NOK a night. An Airbnb private room might fall somewhere in between, say, 500 NOK-ish.
And campsites.
Campsites are generally cheaper, maybe 150 to 350 NOK per night. But remember that wild camping option Elementsretten is potentially free, which is huge.
Right. Okay, what about food costs? This seems like a big variable.
It really is. Super cheap street food options, like a hot dog maybe, could be around 45 NOK. Casual takeout, think pizza slice or shawarma, probably more like 110, 150 NOK. Fast food, surprisingly, isn't necessarily that cheap either, maybe 120 NOK for a combo meal.
But sitting down in a restaurant, that's where it hurts.
That's the budget killer, yeah. Easily 200 to 400 NOK per person just for a main course, according to the estimates. But groceries, if you cook for yourself, might average around 725 NOK for a week's worth.
And drinks. The sources seem to really flag alcohol as a major expense.
Oh, yeah. It comes up repeatedly as a primary cost driver. Heavy taxes. A single beer in a bar, expect 95 NOK, maybe more. Even a coffee is around 45 NOK. And bottled water from a shop can be 30 NOK. Alcohol prices are described as, well, shocking compared to lots of other places.
Wow. Okay, putting these numbers together, what kind of daily budget ranges do the sources suggest people should think about?
They give some rough guides based on travel style. For a backpacker, they suggest aiming for around 600 NOK per day. That's really bare bones. Hostel dorm or camping, cooking nearly all your meals, using public transport or hiking, hardly drinking any alcohol, sticking to free activities.
And if you want a beer or two.
Yeah, they say add maybe 150 NOK per day just for a bit of social drinking, even on that budget.
Okay, what about a step up, mid-range?
Mid-range budget, maybe around 1,500 NOK per day. This could get you a private room in a hostel or an Airbnb, maybe eating out for one meal occasionally, a taxi here and there, a couple of drinks, and including some paid activities like museums.
And if budget isn't the main constraint, upscale.
Upscale starts around 2,600 NOK per day, and honestly, the sky is the limit from there. This means hotels, eating out for most meals, more drinks, maybe renting a car, doing more paid tours and activities.
So besides the obvious ones, alcohol and dining out, what are the other big-ticket items the sources flag?
Accommodation, definitely, if you're not camping or hosteling. Attractions and tours, fjord cruises, guided glacier hikes, northern lights tours. Those specific activities can add up quickly as individual costs. And if you drive, fuel is expensive, plus you'll constantly hit tolls for roads and tunnels.
All right, let's flip it. Given all that, how can you save money in Norway? What are the top tips from the sources?
Number one, without a doubt, repeated everywhere. Cook your own food, hit the supermarkets, buy local staples that are cheaper. If you do eat out, deliberately look for the cheaper options. Shawarma joints, pizza places, not sit-down restaurants.
And the water bottle trick.
Simple but effective. Bring a reusable water bottle. Norwegian tap water is perfectly clean, excellent quality, saves you buying bottled water at like 30 NOK a pop.
Makes sense. What about accommodation savings?
Couch surfing gets mentioned as a way to find free lodging and get great local tips. And camping, especially leveraging that free wild camping right, Elementsretten, is a massive money saver. Just be super respectful, quiet, leave no trace, stay only a night or two in one spot.
And saving on getting around and seeing stuff.
City tourism cards, like the Oslo Pass or Bergen card, can be good value if you plan to hit several paid attractions and use public transport a lot within the city. For longer distances, booking trains and buses way in advance is absolutely key.
Those Vanity Press tickets.
Exactly. They can be up to 50% cheaper, sometimes even more if you book them early online. Wait until the last minute, and prices can easily double and triple. It's a huge difference.
And tackling those scary alcohol prices.
The advice is pretty uniform. Limit how much you drink, especially in bars. If you do want to buy alcohol, go to the state-run Vinmonopolet stores. It's still not cheap compared to home, maybe, but it'll be way, way cheaper than buying drinks out like 50% less or even more.
Any other big saving strategies mentioned?
If you do rent a car, definitely travel with friends to split the costs of the rental, gas, and tolls. That makes it much more manageable per person. And finally, just actively take advantage of all the amazing free stuff. Hiking is often free, exploring national parks is free, city parks like Vigeland are free, those free walking tours. Lean into the outdoors.
Okay, that gives a really practical look at costs and savings. Now, how do you actually get from A to B in this incredibly long, skinny country? What do the sources say about transport options?
Right, the geography really dictates things here. For really long distances, like south to the Arctic North, domestic flights are often the quickest. SES, Norwegian, Widerøe fly frequently. Fares can actually be okay, maybe 500 NOK one way if you book well in advance. Last minute, they shoot up.
What about trains? More scenic?
Definitely. Trains are highlighted as a fantastic way to travel between the major cities and soak in the views. The Oslo-Bergen line is world famous for its scenery. Just the journey itself is an experience. Oslo-Trondheim is another key route. Trains are comfortable, often faster than buses on these main lines.
But again, book ahead for those Minipris fares.
Absolutely crucial. The sources mention fares like 290 NOK for Oslo-Bergen or 360 NOK for Oslo-Trondheim if you get those cheap tickets. Wait too long and it's much, much more expensive.
And buses, they fill the gaps.
Exactly. Buses have a much more extensive network, reaching remote areas trains don't go. They can be cheaper than trains on some routes, but they are usually slower. Companies like Vibus, Norway Bus Express, Flixbus operate. And same story. Book ahead, prices can double if you don't.
And for the fjords and coast, ferries are essential.
Totally. Ferries are a part of life there. And the Hurtigruten, the coastal express steamer, is iconic. It sails the entire coast. It's pretty pricey for the full journey, the sources note, but you can do shorter segments to get a taste of it.
For ultimate flexibility, especially for hiking or remote areas, what about renting a car?
A car gives you the most freedom, no doubt. Great for scenic drives like the Atlantic Ocean Road or exploring Lofoten or getting to trailheads, but yeah, it's not cheap. Estimates are around 470-900 NOK per day for a week-long rental or more.
And mostly manual transmission.
Mostly manual, yeah. Plus, you have to factor in high fuel costs, lots of tolls for roads and tunnels, and potentially challenging winter driving with ice and snow. It's best value if you're splitting the cost with several people.
Once you're in a city like Oslo or Bergen, public transport's good.
Excellent, according to the sources. Oslo has a great system. Metro, buses, trams. Bergen, too. Very easy to get around the main cities without a car. City passes often include transport. Just make sure you buy a ticket before you get on buses or trams, around 39 NOK for an hour in Oslo. Fines are hefty if you're caught without one.
And hitchhiking? Is that a thing?
The sources say it's possible, but maybe not as common as in some other places. Standard advice applies. Be near a main road, look presentable, have a sign, but be prepared for potentially long waits.
Okay, last big piece. When to actually go. The sources stress that the seasons are really distinct and the best time depends entirely on what you want to do.
Totally. Summer, June to August is peak season. It's the warmest, maybe 15-25 degrees C, and you get those incredibly long daylight hours, the midnight sun up north, perfect for hiking, fjord stuff, general sightseeing.
But it's busier and pricier.
Exactly. Peak season means higher prices and more people, though busy in Norway might feel different than, say, Paris in August.
What about the shoulder seasons, spring and fall?
They offer a really nice balance, according to the sources. May and early June mean longer days, wildflowers blooming, waterfalls are roaring from snowmelt, and fewer crowds. Temperatures may be 4-10 degrees C. September offers beautiful fall colors, similar cool temps, and crowds thinning out. Just be aware some attractions might start closing in late September or October.
And then there's winter, embracing the cold and dark.
Right. Winter, roughly October to April, means cold, snow, and short daylight hours, the polar night up north. But you get the lowest prices usually, outside of Christmas, New Year, minimal crowds. And crucially, it's prime time for Northern Lights viewing Sep to March, best known to Jan in the Arctic, and for all the winter sports.
But some things might be closed or inaccessible.
Yeah, you have to be prepared for that. Some mountain roads might be closed, some hiking trails inaccessible, some seasonal attractions shut down.
So the main takeaway for timing.
If you want general sightseeing, hiking, long days for exploring nature and fjords, aim for May through September. If the Northern Lights or skiing are your main goal, then you gotta embrace the winter months, roughly October to April, and just plan around the cold and darkness.
Shifting gears just slightly, the sources also touch on the culture, which sounds fascinating. They mention Koselig.
Yeah, it's often compared to the Danish hygge, described as a feeling of coziness, warmth, contentment, well-being. Often about simple pleasures, maybe being indoors with candles when it's cold out, good company. It seems like a really important cultural value.
And that reinforces that deep connection to nature we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. It seems fundamental. Outdoor life isn't just a hobby. It's deeply ingrained. You see it in the popularity of cabins, and definitely in that allemannsretten, the right to roam, giving people such freedom in the landscape.
The sources also paint a picture of the society itself.
Yeah, generally described as very egalitarian, progressive. Values like punctuality, honesty, social equality, caring for the environment seem really important. And again, that high English proficiency makes interaction easier for visitors.
And the Viking heritage still feels relevant.
Seems so. Presented as a source of pride, visible in historical sites, museums, art, maybe contributing to a sense of rugged individualism you sometimes hear about.
And interacting with Norwegians? What's the vibe according to the sources?
The general take seems to be they can be a bit modest or reserved at first, maybe not overly effusive with strangers, but warm, friendly, and genuinely helpful once you connect. So maybe don't expect loud greetings, but sincere kindness.
Okay, connecting this all to the bigger picture. What about safety? Norway feels safe, right?
Very much so. The sources consistently rank it as one of the safest countries in the world. Violent crime is really low. It's generally considered very safe to walk around cities day or night.
But the real safety concern is the outdoors.
That's the crucial point highlighted again and again. Respecting nature's power, knowing your limits, having the right gear, enough food and water, telling someone your route and when you expect to be back is vital, especially in the mountains where weather changes incredibly fast.
And driving safety.
Also important, be ready for narrow roads, lots of long tunnels, and potentially very challenging winter conditions, snow, ice, which require proper tires and careful driving.
What about petty crime, like pickpocketing?
Described as rare, but like any tourist destination, it can happen in crowded spots in big cities like Oslo. Just the usual advice. Be aware of your surroundings, keep an eye on your stuff in busy places, but it's not seen as a major issue.
Wildlife? Anything to worry about.
If you're hiking way out in remote areas, you might see moose or reindeer. The advice is just keep your distance, don't approach them. Dangerous animal encounters aren't really a common concern. Oh, and the sources mention the emergency number is a 112. And travel insurance is highly recommended, especially if you're doing adventurous outdoor stuff, just to cover potential injuries or medical needs.
So there you have it. A real deep dive into navigating Norway, pulling out the key stuff straight from these sources. It's a country of just jaw-dropping beauty, a unique culture, but one that definitely needs some thoughtful planning, especially around the budget.
Yeah, we've seen that while it is undeniably expensive, probably one of the priciest places you could visit, there are real practical ways to make it more affordable, mostly by embracing all those free outdoor opportunities and, well, getting friendly with the supermarket aisles.
From those iconic fjords and the challenge of the hikes, to the cool modern cities and that magic of the Arctic sky, Norway really does offer experiences you won't find anywhere else.
And this kind of brings us to a final thought, doesn't it? Given these trade-offs, the sources point out the high cost versus the incredible freedom and beauty of Norway's nature and its unique cultural values. What specific part of this destination, considering everything we've talked about, stands out most to you?